I'm a 28-year-old woman, and for as long as I can remember, I've dreamed of visiting Japan. It wasn't just a passing interest. I grew up reading about its history, trying to cook Japanese food, and watching travel documentaries. It was the one place in the world I wanted to see with my own eyes. My mom always told me that if I worked hard and graduated, she would help fund the trip as a congratulatory gift. It was something she repeated so often that I never questioned it. It was just understood. Once I was in a good place financially, I'd finally go on my dream vacation. So, I worked. I put myself through college, balancing full-time studies with a job to cover tuition and living expenses. After graduation, I found a stable job, moved into my own place, and started saving seriously. Every extra dollar went into my travel fund. I wasn't reckless with money. I budgeted, I made sacrifices, and I waited until I was in the perfect position to go. But every time I brought up booking the trip, my mom had an excuse. She would tell me it wasn't the right time, that something more important needed my attention first. One time, she suggested I wait until she could come with me so we could experience it together. Another time, she mentioned how the family was struggling financially and that maybe I could help out instead. It was always something, but I wasn't in a rush. I had waited this long, I could wait a little longer. Then, out of nowhere, my younger sister, Lily 25F, announced that she and her boyfriend were planning a luxury European vacation. She didn't have the money for it, but that didn't seem to be stopping her. She was gushing about five-star hotels, private tours, and fancy restaurants. When I asked her how she planned to afford it, she brushed it off, saying she had it handled. I didn't think much of it at the time. Lily had always been the type to act first and figure out the details later. She had never been good with money, but somehow things always worked out for her. I assumed her boyfriend's family was paying for the trip, or that she'd racked up another credit card bill she had no plan to pay off. I only found out the truth when I logged onto Instagram one day and saw the pictures. Lily in front of the Eiffel Tower, Lily posing on a gondola in Venice, Lily clinking glasses at a rooftop bar in Santorini. Every post had some overly dramatic caption about how this was a once-in-a-lifetime experience and how she was so lucky to have a family that supports her dreams. It didn't make sense until I saw the comment from my mom underneath one of the posts. "Anything for my girls, you deserve this." A sinking feeling hit me. I opened my banking app, and sure enough, my dedicated travel savings account was wiped out. My mother had always been listed as a secondary account holder from when I was younger, something I had never thought to change. She had drained every last dollar. I called my mom immediately, and she didn't even try to deny it. She told me she had used the money to pay for Lily's trip because Lily needed it more. Apparently, my sister had been feeling down lately, and my mom thought a luxury vacation would lift her spirits. She told me I had plenty of time to go to Japan, and that I shouldn't be so selfish when Lily never gets to do things like this. I reminded her that this wasn't some spare change sitting in a bank account, it was my savings. The money I had spent years putting away, dollar by dollar, waiting for the right time. She acted like it was no big deal. When I asked her how she expected me to afford my own trip now, she just scoffed and said, "You have a good job, don't you? You can always save up again." I hung up before I said something I'd regret. Lily, of course, had no shame. When I confronted her, she acted like I was overreacting. She told me it was just money, and that I should be happy for her. According to her, I had been obsessed with Japan for years, so I would go eventually. Meanwhile, she and her boyfriend were living in the moment. I didn't bother arguing. It was clear they had no guilt, no remorse. So I did the only thing I could do. I booked my Japan trip anyway. I had been saving in a separate emergency fund, and with a work bonus that had recently come in, I had enough to make it happen. First-class flights, luxury hotels, private tours. If my own mother could steal from me to give my sister an extravagant vacation, then I wasn't going to hold back on myself. The second I started posting my own travel photos, though, the real drama began. Because the moment my mom saw that I had gone without her, she completely lost it. The moment I landed in Japan, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Call after call, text after text. My mother had gone into full meltdown mode. She was furious. Apparently, she never actually thought I would go without her. She had assumed I would either give in to guilt, or at least bring her along. Now she was panicking, bombarding me with messages about how I had abandoned her, and how she couldn't believe I would be so selfish. Every message followed the same pattern. First the outrage, how dare I leave her behind after everything she had done for me. Then the guilt, how a good daughter would have made sure her mother was taken care of first. And finally the desperation, how she was just so hurt that I didn't even consider including her. I ignored every single message. Instead, I checked into my hotel, stretched out on my king-sized bed, and let the realization sink in. I was finally here. After years of saving, working and waiting, I had made it, and I wasn't going to let her ruin it. A few hours later, I posted my first photo, a simple shot of the view from my hotel balcony. Within minutes, my phone lit up again. But this time, it wasn't just my mom. Relatives started chiming in. Some were subtle, sending passive-aggressive messages about how much my mother loved me, and how family should always come first. Others went straight for the attack, calling me cold-hearted for leaving my poor mother behind. But not everyone was against me. A few relatives reached out in support, telling me they understood why I had gone no contact for this trip. Apparently, my mom had already started spinning the narrative, acting like I had randomly cut her off for no reason. The moment she realized that some family members weren't falling for it, she switched tactics. That's when Lily decided to insert herself. Instead of showing even the slightest bit of remorse, she took the opportunity to mock me. She sent me a message saying I needed to stop being so bitter, and that I should have at least considered bringing our mom along. It was like she had completely forgotten that my entire travel fund had been stolen to pay for her vacation. I didn't respond. I didn't block her either. She wasn't worth the effort. Instead, I put my phone on silent, muted every family group chat, and decided that for the next few weeks I was going to pretend they didn't exist. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control. I threw myself into my trip. I explored Kyoto's temples, wandered through Shibuya's neon-lit streets, and sat in quiet cafes, drinking matcha while watching the world go by. I attended a traditional tea ceremony, booked a private tour of an ancient castle, and indulged in every single thing I had dreamed of doing for years. Back home, things were slowly unraveling. First, my mother started reaching out to relatives, trying to get small loans here and there. Then she maxed out another credit card. Soon the pressure started mounting, and the cracks began to show. A cousin reached out, letting me know that my mom had officially started struggling with her credit card payments. Apparently, she had maxed out multiple cards to cover Lily's trip, and was now scrambling to find someone to bail her out. A day later, I got a message from my mom. She needed a small loan to help cover some unexpected expenses. She promised she would pay it back soon, and even threw in a sad story about how she was really struggling. I didn't even entertain the idea. I responded with a single message, reminding her that she had stolen my travel fund for Lily's trip. That was it. No argument, no back and forth. Just a simple reminder of exactly why she was in this position. Her response? Silence. At least at first. The next day, she took her complaints to Facebook. Suddenly, there were dramatic posts about how her ungrateful daughter had left her behind, how she had sacrificed so much for me only to be abandoned, and how she was just a struggling mother who needed a little support. I didn't reply. I didn't even acknowledge it. Meanwhile, Lily continued posting about her European adventure like nothing was wrong. She was still posting pictures of expensive dinners, designer shopping trips, and boat tours, completely oblivious to the fact that our mother was spiraling. When the guilt tripping didn't work, my mom switched tactics again. She started sending me old photos, pictures from when I was a kid, memories of past family vacations, screenshots of old messages where I had told her I loved her. Every single message was a clear attempt to manipulate me, to remind me of who we used to be so I would cave in and feel bad for her. I didn't respond. Instead, I checked my itinerary and saw that my hotel had an option to extend my stay at a discounted rate. I booked an extra few nights, using some saved-up travel points, and treated myself to a countryside ryokan stay, soaking in an onsen under the stars, while sipping sake. A few days later, a cousin sent me a warning. My mom was planning to show up at the airport when I got back. I didn't even hesitate. I extended my trip by another week. Extending my trip was the best decision I could have made. The idea of landing back home and walking straight into a full-blown confrontation with my mother at the airport was not something I was willing to deal with. So I changed my flight, booked an extra week at a luxury ryokan in the mountains, and gave myself more time to enjoy Japan without the stress of whatever chaos was brewing back home. It didn't take long for my mother to realize what I had done. The moment she saw that I hadn't arrived as expected, the frantic messages started again. That's when the emergency happened. Suddenly, my mother was claiming that something terrible had happened, and that I needed to come home immediately. No details, just vague messages about how things were falling apart, and how she didn't know what to do. I wasn't buying it. Instead of responding, I called my cousin, the only relative who had been straight with me about what was happening back home. They checked in with other family members and got back to me within minutes. No emergency, no crisis, just my mother trying to manipulate me into coming home early. I let the messages pile up and spent the day soaking in an outdoor onsen, drinking tea, and enjoying a full kaiseki dinner served in my room. If she wanted me to panic and rush home, it wasn't happening. Then, out of nowhere, Lily reached out. Her tone had completely changed. Gone was the arrogance, the mocking attitude from before. Now she was playing the role of the concerned sister, talking about how she didn't want us to be like this, and how we should talk. It was obvious what was happening. She had ignored the problem for as long as it wasn't affecting her. But now that our mother's financial situation was spiraling, she suddenly wanted to fix things. I didn't bother responding. There was nothing to say. A few days later, my cousin gave me an update. My mother had been juggling multiple credit card payments, borrowing from relatives, and delaying bills to keep up the illusion of financial stability. But now, with no new sources of money, she had officially defaulted on one of her major credit cards. The bank was on her case, and she was frantically calling relatives, trying to get someone to bail her out. Most of them refused. For years she had made a habit of borrowing money and never paying it back. People were finally catching on. And then something happened that I wasn't expecting. One of my relatives publicly called her out on Facebook. They posted a long, detailed comment under one of her dramatic posts, spelling out exactly what had happened. How she had stolen my money, given it to Lily, and now expected me to fix the mess. The reaction was instant. Some people tried to defend her, but others, ones who had been on the fence before, started backing away. The story was out. She couldn't twist it anymore. I took that as my cue to unfriend both her and Lily on every platform. If they wanted to talk, they could do it somewhere else. They no longer had access to my life. Meanwhile, I was thriving. With no distractions, I fully indulged in the last week of my trip. I booked a spa retreat, took a private food tour, and indulged in every experience I had planned, even the extravagant omakase dinner I had once thought was out of reach. Back home, my mother was running out of options. That's when she tried a new tactic, threatening to disown me if I didn't help. A message popped up from an unknown number. It was long, dramatic, filled with accusations about how I had betrayed her, and how if I didn't step up, she would be forced to cut me out of her life. I replied with 2 words, "Go ahead." Her response came within minutes, but I didn't read it. I muted the number and went back to enjoying my night. The next day, I got messages from relatives telling me to be the bigger person. Some of them tried to guilt me about family loyalty, but I ignored them all. They weren't offering to help her financially either. They just wanted me to do it so they wouldn't have to. Then came the final trick. A relative reached out, telling me my mother had suddenly fallen ill. She was supposedly too weak to talk, too heartbroken to eat, and someone needed to be there for her. I didn't even bother checking if it was real. By this point, it was obvious she was throwing everything at the wall to see what would stick. I ignored it, and unsurprisingly, within a few days she was miraculously feeling better. The only person who reached out with something worth saying was my dad. My parents had been divorced for years, and while he had always tried to stay out of the drama, he had been keeping up with everything. He sent me a simple message, telling me that he was proud of me for standing my ground, that I had every right to put myself first, and that he was glad I wasn't letting them walk all over me anymore. That was all I needed to hear. As I packed my bags for my flight home, I realized something. This was the first time I had ever put myself first without guilt, and I wasn't going back. When I finally boarded my flight home, it was on my own terms. No airport ambush, no dramatic confrontation, just a quiet departure from Japan with no one knowing my exact arrival time. I had turned off location sharing, ignored every message from my mother and Lily, and made sure that when I landed, no one would be waiting for me. The moment I stepped off the plane, I went straight to my apartment. No detours, no stops. I called for a cab, kept my phone on silent, and didn't breathe a word to anyone that I was back. It didn't take long for my mother to figure it out. Less than 24 hours later, the messages started flooding in. First, the guilt. How I had abandoned her, how she had spent weeks worrying about me, and how she just wanted to talk. Then came the desperation, how she was struggling, how I should step up and do the right thing. I ignored every single one. Then Lily jumped in. She was still on her high horse, still acting like she had done nothing wrong. Instead of apologizing, she called me spoiled for taking a first-class trip instead of helping our mother. According to her, I should have used my money to fix the mess instead of spending it on myself. She didn't mention that her own vacation had been paid for with stolen money. I left her on rid. A few days later, a cousin reached out with an update. My mother was drowning in debt, creditors were hounding her, and she had burned bridges with most of the family by constantly begging for financial help. No one wanted to deal with her anymore. Then, months later, I got another fraud alert. Someone had tried to take out a loan in my name, using old documents. I immediately filed a fraud report, though part of me wasn't surprised. My mother had already tried this once before. My mother's name was all over the application. I shut it down immediately. I froze my credit, updated every security measure possible, and contacted my bank to make sure nothing slipped through. Then I sent my mother a single message: "Try this again, and I'll have the police involved." No back and forth, no room for excuses, just a clear warning. Her response was instant: panic, denial, more excuses. I didn't read any of it. I blocked her number. Then I blocked Lily's too. For the first time in my life, I was truly done. Blocking my mother and Lily across every platform was long overdue. There was nothing left to say. No explanation, no argument, just silence. But silence wasn't something my mother could handle. Within days, she took her meltdown to Facebook. Long, dramatic posts started popping up, each one painting herself as the victim of a cruel, heartless daughter. According to her, I had abandoned my own family and left her to suffer alone after she had sacrificed so much for me. She made sure to highlight how selfish I was for spending thousands on a trip while she was struggling. She conveniently left out the part where she had stolen my travel fund to pay for Lily's luxury vacation. The posts got traction. Some relatives who had no idea what had really happened jumped in, commenting about how family should always come first and how I should be grateful for everything my mother had done for me. Others, the ones who already knew about the fraud and manipulation, stayed quiet. Then my dad got involved. Unlike my mother, my dad never engaged in family drama. He had divorced her years ago and had always kept a distance. But this time he wasn't going to sit back and let her rewrite the story. Under one of her posts, he left a single comment: "You stole from her. Now you're mad, she won't bail you out. Tell the full story." The reaction was immediate. Some relatives who had been blindly defending her started asking questions. A few even reached out to me privately, wanting to know if it was true. Others doubled down, saying I should forgive and forget because she's still my mother. I ignored it all. That's when she tried something new. Suddenly there was a health crisis. Messages started circulating that she had fallen gravely ill, and that the stress of everything had taken a toll on her. The implication was clear. If something happened to her, it would be my fault. It took me one phone call to confirm it was a lie. A cousin who lived nearby checked in and found her perfectly fine. No hospital visits, no health issues, just another desperate attempt to manipulate me into reaching out. But this time the lie backfired. Some of the family members who had previously been neutral were now done with her. They had watched her pull stunt after stunt, and now that she was fabricating health issues, even they were backing away. Meanwhile, Lily was changing her tune. She must have realized that our mother's credibility was gone, because she suddenly started reaching out again. Her messages were careful, almost like she was testing the waters. She tried to act like she had never really been part of the problem, as if she hadn't benefited from the stolen money, as if she hadn't mocked me before my trip. I shut it down immediately. You enabled this. Now deal with it. She didn't message again. Back home, my mother's financial problems were getting worse. With no help from me, creditors were now going after her aggressively. She was calling anyone who would listen, trying to get financial help from distant relatives, old friends, anyone. No one was biting. Then she made one last desperate move. She sent an email to my workplace. She didn't hold back. She painted me as a terrible, selfish person, claiming that I had stolen from my own family and was heartless enough to let my own mother suffer. It was clear what she was trying to do. She wanted to ruin my reputation, to make me look bad in front of my employer. It backfired spectacularly. My boss called me into his office, handed me a printout of the email, and asked if I wanted a copy for my records in case I needed it for a restraining order. Then he laughed. If she emails again, we'll just block her. And that was that. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't reach me. I had cut her off completely. Since my mother had tried to ruin my reputation, I decided it was time to set the record straight. I wrote a single post, short, factual, and to the point. I explained how I had saved for years for my dream trip, how my mother had stolen that money to fund Lily's vacation, and how, when I refused to fix their financial mess, they turned against me. I didn't add unnecessary details or emotions. I let the facts speak for themselves. The post spread fast. Family members who had been on the fence started reaching out. Some apologized for believing my mother's lies. Others who had blindly supported her suddenly had nothing to say. It was clear that, for the first time, she couldn't twist the story in her favor. And then the fallout began. My mother started losing friends and support. The same people who had once sympathized with her now saw her for who she really was. The messages defending her stopped. The dramatic Facebook posts dried up. Lily, sensing the shift, started backpedaling. She tried to act like she had never really been part of it, like she had just been caught in the middle of a bad situation. She conveniently left out the fact that she had mocked me before my trip, and had fully enjoyed the stolen money, while my mother dug herself deeper into debt. I didn't let it slide. You benefited from this mess. You don't get to play innocent now. She didn't respond. Then karma caught up with her. A cousin let me know that Lily's boyfriend had dumped her. He had finally realized how entitled she was, how she expected everyone else to clean up her messes. Now she was broke, struggling, and for the first time had no one to bail her out. And then one last message came through. My mother, out of options, reached out again. She claimed she was willing to make amends if I could just help her out with one small payment. I sent a single response. You can ask Lily. She thought vacations were more important than responsibilities. I never heard from her again. To make sure there were no loose ends, I finalized everything, locked down my accounts, updated security settings, and blocked every possible way my mother could reach me. Then I booked my next solo trip. This time I chose Greece. First class, private tours, luxury all the way. No more guilt, no more second chances. For the first time I was completely free. With my mother and Lily completely blocked, my life became peaceful for the first time in years. No more manipulation, no more drama, just silence. I had my finances locked down, my security settings updated, and every possible way for them to contact me cut off. But of course that didn't stop my mother from trying. A cousin reached out to let me know that despite being blocked everywhere, my mother was still desperate to reach me. She had resorted to using fake numbers, creating new social media accounts, and even asking distant relatives to pass along messages. No one was responding. She had burned too many bridges, and people were getting tired of her antics. Then things got worse for her. I found out that my mother had officially defaulted on her rent. She had managed to keep up payments for a while by borrowing from distant relatives and maxing out more credit. But with no new sources of income, the eviction notice finally arrived. She had stretched out her resources as long as she could, but with no financial help coming in, reality had finally caught up. The landlord had given her multiple warnings, and now she was out of chances. Lily, for the first time in her life, was facing real consequences. Without my mother paying her way, she was suddenly in financial trouble too. Her savings, if she ever had any, were gone, and her boyfriend had dumped her, leaving her to figure things out on her own. The desperation hit fast. My mother started spreading stories to anyone who would listen, claiming I had let my own mother and sister become homeless. She played the victim, painting me as the cruel daughter who abandoned her struggling family while she had done everything for me. I didn't acknowledge a single word of it. Lily, meanwhile, was getting a harsh reality check. A family friend mentioned that she was finally realizing how difficult life was when she had to rely on herself. There was no one left to bail her out, and for the first time she was actually struggling. Then, after months of silence, she reached out. She sent a long-winded email, claiming she now understood why I had been upset. She didn't directly apologize, but the message was clear. She wanted help. She mentioned how things had been hard since our mother's eviction, how she was trying to get back on her feet, and how she just needed a little support. I deleted the email without responding. With no other options left, my mother made one last desperate move. She called my dad. She begged him to talk some sense into me, to convince me to help her out, to make me understand that family shouldn't turn their backs on each other. He laughed in her face. His response was short and brutal. "You made your bed. Now lie in it." That was the final straw for everyone. The last few relatives who had still been defending her finally saw the truth. She had no more supporters, no one left to manipulate. She was on her own. The last update I got was that my mother had moved into a low-budget apartment with a roommate, and Lily had taken a minimum-wage job. Watching them struggle should have made me feel bad. It didn't. They had every chance to do right by me, and they chose betrayal. Now they were dealing with the consequences. Without me. Months of silence passed, and for the first time in my life, I experienced what true peace felt like. No manipulation, no guilt tripping, no unexpected financial disasters caused by my mother or Lily. My job was going great, my savings were growing, and I had started making plans for my next solo trip. Just when I thought she had finally given up, my mother made one last desperate attempt. An email arrived from an unfamiliar address, but it didn't take long to figure out who it was from. The subject line alone was dramatic. "We need to talk before it's too late." The message was long, filled with the usual emotional manipulation. She claimed she had changed, that she had learned from her mistakes, and that I would regret cutting her out one day. She reminded me that family is forever, and that when I eventually had children, I would finally understand why mothers make sacrifices for their kids. It was the same routine, twisting the story, painting herself as the misunderstood mother, pretending that everything she did was for my own good. I sent a single reply: "You sacrificed me for Lily. Now live with it." Minutes later, another email arrived. This time the mask had dropped. The message was filled with insults, calling me ungrateful, cruel, heartless. She blamed me for her financial struggles, claiming I had turned my back on my family. It was a desperate attempt to get some kind of reaction. I didn't reply. I didn't even open any further messages. I blocked the email and went on with my day. Surprisingly, Lily never reached out. For the first time, she actually respected my boundary. Whether it was because she had finally learned her lesson, or because she was too embarrassed, I didn't care. The silence was all I needed. Months passed, and then I discovered the final betrayal. I was doing a routine check of my credit report when I saw it, an attempted loan application under my name. My mother had tried to take out another loan using my information. I reported the fraud immediately. With all the security measures I had put in place, the attempt had been flagged before anything could go through. But that wasn't enough for me. This time, I wasn't just shutting it down. I was making sure she faced real consequences. Her actions left a mark on her financial record. When she tried to dispute it, she had no proof, no way to explain why she was trying to open accounts in her daughter's name. A judge dismissed her case instantly. That was the end of it. From what I heard, Lily was still struggling, working a regular job for the first time in her life. Without my mother to bail her out, she had no choice but to rely on herself. Meanwhile, my life only got better. I earned a promotion, my savings grew, and I finally started planning my next trip. This time, I set my sights on Greece. First-class flights, private tours, and complete freedom. I used to feel guilty for setting boundaries. Now I feel nothing but relief. Before booking my trip, I deleted every last trace of contact with my mother and Lily. No numbers saved, no email addresses, no way for them to reach me again. With my toxic family behind me, I packed my bags, stepped onto my flight, and walked into my new life, completely free.